Shoulder! Arms!
President, the Guard of Honour of the Grenadier Guards, the Coldstream Guards, and the Scots Guards are present and awaiting your instruction. Right outside of the party colours.
There's King Charles and President Trump. This is them inspecting the Guard of Honor. I want to bring back our Royals contributor, Victoria Murphy. Victoria, explain a little bit about what this part of the ceremony means. Why do this?
This is a very staple part of state visits when the visiting head of state is invited to inspect a Guard of Honor. And it's all about that kind of offering that sense of respect to the visiting leader that they are inspecting the British troops. And we're seeing today another sort of unprecedented element to this visit. We're seeing additional military flags that are paraded. Usually for a state visit, we see the flag of one regiment that has been chosen to be paraded, and now we are seeing 3 today. So the Ministry of Defence has emphasised that that is not something that we have seen before. We're seeing 3 military flags of the Grenadier, the Coldstream and the Scots Guards being paraded today. Again, the Scots Guards, possibly a deliberate choice because of President Trump's Scottish roots there. And this is a really, always a really important part of the ceremony of a state visit and providing that very powerful military imagery there.
And Victoria, it is a lot of ceremony now, but how much of this is meant to symbolize that, we are ready to back you if needed, we are prepared, we have these troops?
I think US-UK military cooperation is a big theme of this trip. The MOD emphasised it when they put out information about this unique flyover that we're going to see later on today from US-UK military jets, the first time we've ever seen that. And they said that that shows the strength of the military cooperation. Today is all about the pomp and ceremony. Today is all about the royal family. They are front and centre for the whole of today, hosting all of these events. And then the focus very much changes tomorrow when the president will go to our Prime Minister's country residence, Chequers in Buckinghamshire, and that is where those political talks will take place. But for today, the sense is that the focus is very much on the ceremonial aspects of the military.
And Maggie, what's on the agenda as President Trump meets with the royal family today?
Yeah, well, there's a full day, Diane, and the pomp and circumstance just really continues. You see them wrapping up this inspection of the Guard of Honor now. There'll be a lunch. And one thing that I think is really interesting is that as part of today, after lunch, they are presenting artifacts to President Trump, sort of these mementos from history that share some type of relationship between the UK and the US. And this is something they do on state visits often. Yeah. With the visiting head of state, they bring out things that could be of importance to the visiting head of state, to that person's country. So when President Trump visits, they'll do just that with things that have historical importance to the UK-US relationship. Do we have any idea what these are, though, Victoria?
We don't know what they are yet. They're brought up by the Royal Collection Trust, who manages the collection of all of the items that the royal family keeps in trust for the nation. And they very carefully select items that they think will be of real interest to the visiting head of state. So it will be very interesting to see what they have chosen. We will find out about that after they have looked at them. There's usually a display laid out. When it's in Buckingham Palace, it's in the picture gallery. Obviously, we are in Windsor today. So after this, there will be a private lunch, which is not, we will not see. And then they will look at those artifacts together. And there will be some explanation of the feeling behind choosing the particular artifacts. And then we see the President's programme continue later on today with a visit to Queen Elizabeth's grave. He will be visiting her tomb. We think privately, that's how Macron did it when he came to Windsor. But he's also going to get a tour of St George's Chapel as well. Of course, that spectacular Gothic chapel, the site for so many big royal moments. And of course, the burial place of Queen Elizabeth and her father as well.
We're
one
seeing
other thing that surprised me
horse...
as well, Victoria.
Victoria, we're seeing the Royal Horse Artillery march past the President, the First Lady, the King, and the Queen now. We're eventually going to see all the troops march past them. What's the symbolism there?
Totally. I mean, this is part of the Household Cavalry, the Royal Household Artillery. There are 2 mounted regiments in the Household Cavalry. They're part of the Household Division, which are the section of our military that, as well as their operational role, they have this ceremonial role, which we see played out at state visits. We see it at other events throughout the year as well, trooping the colour as well. And any time there is a special occasion, they step up and they perform these ceremonial roles. More than ever before, we are seeing larger numbers than ever before. There are 1,300 members of the military involved ceremonially today, and 120 horses. And it has been emphasised by the Ministry of Defence that is the largest ceremonial welcome that we have ever had for a visiting head of state.
What do meetings like this between the royal family and foreign leaders look like behind closed doors? Because right now we are seeing the ceremony of it all. But after this, they're going to go inside that castle. What happens from that point on?
They are. Wouldn't we like to know? I mean, there are, of course, private elements to this day. And, you know, as journalists, we are often reminded that private conversations with the royal family are private conversations. And I think the royal family will be very keen to stay in that lane of extending that genial welcome. They will want to perform their role of leaving any delicate subjects or difficult topics to the politicians. That's constitutionally what we expect of them. We expect them to be politically neutral. Of course, they're not elected. You know, the royal family is not elected, and it's not appropriate for them to be taking part in policy over here. I think that there will be a big focus on shared history, a big focus on President Trump's roots and his connection, his personal connection, his Scottish roots, his family connection to the UK. I think that will come up. And I think there will be a real desire to form that connection and have those personal bonds established.
And traditionally, both heads of state give speeches, right, at the state dinner. And often there's humor involved in these speeches. They're often quite friendly. If I'm correct, you almost praise the other head of state in this formal speech.
Exactly. So tonight, there will be that lavish state banquet in St George's Hall, 160 people invited. And that's when their words are very public. And so everything they say will, of course, be made public.
All right, let's listen in.
Guard of Honor will move to the left in 3. 4 3s! Left!
And there you have it. King Charles, President Trump, First Lady Melania Trump, Queen Camilla, and Prince William, along with Princess Kate, are all now heading into Windsor Castle there in England for this historic second state visit for President Trump and the First Lady. Victoria, we saw the pageantry, the manners, the protocol, all the attention to detail here. And you also mentioned soft power. Despite being heads of state, the king and the queen here don't really hold traditional political power in that, you don't expect them to be negotiating any deals during this meeting, but they do have a lot of influence. What kind of a message do you think they're trying to send here with this second state visit, the first political leader in modern history to have something like this?
That's exactly right. And this is a message not specifically just from the King and Queen here. This is a message from the whole of Britain, because this is the British government's decision to extend this invitation. We remember our Prime Minister Keir Starmer brandishing it in the Oval Office, much to President Trump's delight, for him to be invited for this unprecedented second state visit. And I think that the King and Queen, their role here today is to really smooth that path for those political discussions. That's what we mean when we talk about soft power. They're not going to get involved in the tricky discussions, but actually that's an incredibly powerful thing, because they can maintain that relationship with President Trump on that pleasant, convivial, very respectful footing, whatever happens with political talks tomorrow. And I think that's exactly what they are going to be trying to do. They're going to be establishing those bonds, trying to nurture those bonds, nurture the things that he is already interested in, he already has an affinity with. They're in a very good position, because we know that Trump is well disposed towards the monarchy and well disposed towards King Charles as an individual as well. So they'll be looking to really build on that with this visit.
And Maggie, I'm out of time, but quickly, what are you watching for from the rest of this visit?
Well, I think, Dan, it'll be interesting, piggybacking off what Victoria said, to see how this soft power translates into real power, into real policy. We're looking forward to tomorrow's visit as well, where the president meets with the prime minister here in the UK. They have a lot on their agenda to discuss, and so it'll be fascinating to watch how this plays out. Will the pomp and circumstance of today translate into real policy tomorrow?
We'll find out. Maggie Rulli, Victoria Murphy, thank you both.